Mr. Mukherjee. There was a management man, Professor Calro. So I gave you 5 names. Ramachandran, yeah, 5 of us. So 5 of us members, and there was a member secretary from the government of India, of a secretary to government rank. In our case, at least we took the task very seriously. And generally, though I was the youngest member, my word prevailed. Whenever I said something, the whole commission by and large, because I gave a lot of thought to these issues. And generally, my word prevailed. When they required a lot more of experience, Mr. Ramachandran, because he was an encyclopedia, he had immense, he knew exactly right, 47 what happened, 48 what happened, what would I know about 47, 48, I only read books. But he was there in administration at that time. So, Ramachandran and I, ideas and general outline was mostly mine, where some detail and historical perspective required Mr. Ramachandran, we dealt together very well. The first report, we didn't Right to Information Act. In fact, I myself wrote every single word of that because I'm the author of the Right to Information Act. We wanted to review that act and see what requires to be done in the light of experience to improve it. And it was within 2 years of the enactment of that law. And the law provides for easy improvements without amendment to the law in case there are difficulties within 2 years. So we took the opportunity, produced a very slim report, about 150 pages or 200 pages, I don't recall. But it's very granular. It's a ready-to-use kind of a thing. You don't have to do any thinking if you're serious about it. I remember the commission called on the Prime Minister. It was a practice. Each report, call on the Prime Minister and present a report to him. Then we'd have a discussion. The concerned minister and secretary to government also would be there. And normally, as long as I was on the commission, the chairman would say a few things initially, but most of the briefing was done by me. So I briefed the Prime Minister about the key recommendations and the reasons why we came to those conclusions. At the end of that, Prime Minister said, "What shall we do now?" I laughed and said, "Mr. Prime Minister, whatever you do, please don't appoint another group of ministers for this." Because at that time, there were 77 groups of ministers, 77 of them. It was a joke. Basically, everything you simply pushed down to another group of ministers. He laughed, everybody laughed. Normally, people don't talk to the Prime Minister like that. I'm sort of, pulling his leg. Then he said, "What shall I do?" I said, "Look, if you're serious about it, your minister is here, your secretary is here of the subject. Ask them to sit with us for a couple of hours because they are busy people. There are 100 things on their table every day. They don't have the patience or the time to understand the larger picture. So we'll explain to them. And once they look at the 20 or 25 recommendations that we made, and why each recommendation is made, what's the basis, then you can sit with them and decide. As a government, we tell you as a body of experts what we believe is necessary for the country. As a government, you must finally take a decision. In some areas, you may feel some things are not desirable or some things are problematic. It's up to you. Whichever out of the 25, 26 recommendations you make, whichever 10 or 15 you believe are worthwhile and you can do it, go ahead and do it. That's the best way forward. He told the minister immediately. He gave instructions. Minister came to me. Earlier, we didn't meet. That minister and I, we didn't know each other. And once he saw the way the Prime Minister was talking to me, he came to me and said very respectfully, "Sir, we'll do that." I said, "Fine." Nothing happened. Nothing happened. This is the problem. Even when the government appoints its own expert bodies, rarely is there somebody who has the patience, the diligence, and the commitment to actually utilize that knowledge and serve the country. Recently, for instance, the Parliament enacted certain criminal laws of the land. You must have heard of that. Indian Evidence Act, then the CRPC and the IPC were amended, or new laws were enacted, and they gave some fancy Hindi names. Let's not worry about the names. It was a priceless opportunity to improve our criminal justice system because our criminal justice system is in shambles. It's in a terrible state. We have in India about 3.5 crore cases pending, criminal cases alone. 3.5 crore cases, the world's largest number. Maybe 4 crore cases now. We have dilatory procedures, we have all kinds of things wrong. You don't have to think. The NDA government earlier, Vajpayee's time, they appointed a committee headed by Justice Malimat, the former Chief Justice of the state of Karnataka. And it's one of the most lucid recommendations. I knew Malimat, and I met him several times, and I went through that report very carefully. One of the most lucid reports ever produced, very thoughtful. All experts were there, from the police, from judiciary, from law, from human rights, and all kinds of things. Very thoughtful, very well written, well thought out, lucid report. Their own party government earlier. There is not one word of that report that was utilized in framing these laws. So what's the point of these laws? Just a little publicity. This is the problem. Our decisions in government must be informed by expertise, real expertise. It doesn't have to be a committee or a commission, but there must be real expertise, evidence, logic, best practices, innovation, and a solution or a set of solutions. Oftentimes it's not happening. I don't blame the politicians. Much of the blame rests with the bureaucracy. That's their job. They're the professionals. Politicians don't have the time or energy, or sometimes that knowledge or skill. It's the job of the professional civil service to actually have that passion, that expertise, and to go into the evidence, to understand, and then to push that. It's not happening. Not on the scale required, except in some areas. Economic management, to some extent, we are doing it. But in general, in most areas, our administration, it's just we're going with the flow. We're going through the motions. Very perfunctory. That's not the way to run a country. It's not the way to run a state. It's not the way to run a city. It's not the way to run an agency. Okay, so in an examination like this, obviously when for every position there are 1,000 people contesting, or 2,000 people, statistically only some people get selected. For heaven's sake, don't think of that selection as a great thing. To me, it's irrelevant. I know your teachers will be very upset, your dean will be very worried. Why am I saying getting into services is irrelevant? It's irrelevant. How do I care? Who is there? What I care is, are they capable of serving my country? Are they serving our society well? Otherwise, there are 1,000 fellows for every position who want to be there. How do I care which of them is there? I care what they actually do. So don't take this as be all and end all in life. It's an opportunity. Either your parents or you have made a decision that you consciously work for the public good. That's what this is about. Unfortunately, many people want to enter because of the glamour. IAS, you think is somewhere at the top of the heap. It's heaven. No, nothing of the kind. It's nothing. Just 2 months ago, I think I was in Pune. I was interacting with 180 officers who were selected this year. Out of the maybe 200, more than 200, 250 officers came from all over the country. IAS, IPS, Foreign Service, and Central Services put together. A large number of this year's batch. I was the chief guest and a former UPSC chairman, Dr. Agarwal. He was my colleague there on the dais along with me. I told the young officers bluntly, your service or your rank do not define you. They're irrelevant. You may have all your faces plastered, you may have your photographs, it's immaterial. It just gives you an opportunity to promote public good. What's going to define you is, what are you going to do with the opportunity you get? Are you going to make a difference to this country in a positive way, genuinely? Otherwise, you're merely a parasite on the system. You're merely a passenger. And you're all bright kids. Somebody to get into these services, unless you're bright, unless you work hard, it's very difficult. If that effort you put in life in some other form, you can do so much more for yourself. You can earn money honestly. You can have a good life. You can have satisfaction. So why go there unless you really make a difference? And it's not important to be in the service. If you really care for public good, acquire the skills, you have the opportunity, make the most of it. That's what I'm asking. Because in a growing economy, people with intelligence and hard work can do very well anywhere. So don't go there unless your heart is in it, unless you have the skills to make a difference to the public good. Because you're only wasting the opportunity. and the country is simply not moving forward the way it should. There are so many areas where so much more needs to be done, so much more can be done. And it's not being done because the people at the helm of affairs, they simply don't have the skills or care or concern. So don't think of getting into IAS or civil services as the most important thing in life, because then you will be setting yourselves up for failure. If you get an opportunity, make the most of it, make a difference. If you don't get in, don't think it's the end of the world. Those who get in, don't think that you are the best of humanity, you are God's gift to us, nothing of the kind. You have an opportunity. Be humble, learn, and do whatever you can to make lives better for the people of this country. If you don't get in, it's not the end of the world. The real things that matter in the world is not produced by those in government. You just look around, on yourselves or around you. All the things that you see, the jackets you're wearing, the watches you're wearing, or the pen that you have, or the table, or this microphone, or this screen, or anything that you see around you, is there any one of these things produced by the government? So what is government producing? Your life is about things that you need, goods and services. So don't think that the government is the be-all and end-all. Don't have that silly notion. It's a bad idea. It's a dangerous idea. You can do anything in the world and make a difference to fellow human beings. In fact, sometimes I tell very, very crudely, very firmly. No, as any one of you or your parents who encourage you to join this academy and then to appear for the civil service examination, has any one of them wondered any given day, hey, district collector of our district is not coming to the work, he is on leave. My God, I feel orphaned. The world has collapsed. Has anyone of you felt that way? If the fellow is coming or not, does it matter to you at all? But supposing in your house, the bathroom is clogged. It is stinking. There's no the flush is not working. And you're not able to clean it up yourself. You require whom? A plumber. A plumber is not available. Can you survive for a few days? Who is more important than? There you have. Have perspective. Don't think of these jobs as the most important jobs. Others are less important. It's a very stupid way of looking at it. Only in India we have this approach because of colonial mindset. We breed arrogance. We breed corruption. We breed ignorance. We breed laziness. Whatever you do to fulfill genuine human needs in the form of goods and services is worthy and noble. Respect that. We also require a competent government to take care of the collective needs. If they do well, let's support them and respect them. If they don't do well, ignore them and punish them. Don't have these high-falutin notions that somebody in so-called power is very important, we are unimportant. That is a slavish mentality. I want self-respecting citizen. I want dignity of labor. I want real value for the money that we give or we spend. I want real goods and services to our people. That's what prosperity is about. Okay? It's incredibly important what I mentioned. You think about it. I know this is not something anybody tells you. They tell you how wonderful this is, how fantastic it is, how you must get into IAS. That's the life's greatest ambition. I don't understand what the hell is life's ambition to be in the IAS or IPS or to be a minister or prime minister. It's a very silly ambition. What you accomplish is the ambition, not what position you acquire. That's a very silly approach in life. These are very harsh words. Think about them. You're young people. Just think about them. Does it make sense or not? You make up your mind and then decide. So if you don't get in, don't be depressed. I see far too many people giving years and years of their life and then feeling dejected, depressed, lose self-confidence. And I see a few people who get in, some of them become arrogant, useless. Both are very dysfunctional, sad for the country. Be practical. I have the courage to tell your parents to be practical. They love you. Sometimes they love you too much. They don't think clearly. So sometimes even if you love your parents and respect them, you have to help them think clearly. Okay? All right. Who next? Yes. Sanjana. Sania. Okay.
Myself, Sania from Khammam district, Telangana, sir.
Okay.
I'm studying in intermediate first year.
Okay.
Sir, my question is: in recent times, there has been a trend of increasing in giving freebies to the people by the political parties, especially during elections. How can we pursue this giving freebies culture? What is your opinion on this?
You tell me first, Sania. What do you think about it?
Sir, it's like instead of giving freebies, especially during the freebies is giving to the people is good, sir. Means the literal meaning of freebies is the promoting of welfare schemes to the people. But giving them during the elections by political parties, it brings a negative, negative situations in the country, and it's not good, sir.
So what do you want?
It's like not giving freebies, but giving trust to the people, giving assurance that they will be with the people for after coming into the.
So why are the parties giving freebies?
To win in the elections, obviously.
So why can't they win elections without giving freebies?
Because our mentality is that those who now in the present day situations, our people are like that, sir.
So people are bad.
It's not like that, but it's like this.
Make up your mind.
Sir, people, the present mentality of the people is like whomever in the present situations, whom they believe is the people who give money to them, sir. The people who do for the recent welfare, like they won't look that for the future how they will be helpful
So
for
is
us.
there hope?
Yes, sir.
How? I'm not trying to put you in the dock. I'm trying to stimulate your thinking. It's easy for me to give an answer. It's easy for me to give a lecture. But that's all useless. You have to start thinking. You have some germs of ideas. And how to now think in an organized, systematic manner. What are the first principles? What is the evidence? What is the logic? What is the problem? How do you get out of it? Is there a solution? So I'm trying to encourage you. You're all young people. Chief secretaries don't know most of these things, trust me. Ministers and prime ministers don't know most of these things. So I'm encouraging you to think. So don't feel I'm challenging you. Yes, I'm challenging you to think. Okay? Go on.
Sir, I'm asking about the freebies which are given by the political parties, right, sir?
Who else will give freebies? It's a party that's elected to government that offers freebies, right? Who else should give? God will give?
No, sir.
Or an officer will give? Okay. It's a good question, but it raises many important questions. Basically, go back to fundamentals. Why do we need a government? One of you, tell me clearly. Why do we need a government? Emma? Okay. To have an organized, why do you require an organized system?
Sir, if we consider,
Go on.
if we consider the before conditions, like in ancient times, we don't have any organized system.
So you're telling me about Hobbes and nasty, brutish and short, but be thoughtful. Why does humanity need a government? Why did this artificial construct called government come about? Yes.
To balance different sections of the people.
To balance different cultures of people,
Sections of the people.
different sections of people. Okay. Anybody else? Basically, why do we need a government? Animals also, we're all animals, right? Or you have any doubt? We're all animals. We're no different from animals in many fundamental ways, but we're somewhat different in some respects. Other animals don't have governments. Have you ever heard of a government? Of course, you read in stories in Panchatantra and all that animals have a government, they have a king. But they're all stories, fairy tales, right? Animals don't have a government. Only human beings have. Why should human beings have government? You want to join government, right? So why should human beings have government? Have you thought of it? Human beings have two unique situations. One, the brain power is developed considerably in evolution. Therefore, the size of the brain, even at the time of birth, relative to the rest of the body, is very large for us. And also, human beings are erect. Once you are erect, all others before human beings and before these apes, they were all on four legs. So once you are erect, your pelvis size is small, but your brain size has increased. Therefore, the head size has increased. Childbirth is very difficult. So only a tender baby who has not matured can be born, unlike any other animal. Any animal, you see animals calving, within half an hour or 1 hour, the calf starts walking and running, right? Whatever be the animal, doesn't matter. Within a few months, the calf is more or less adult. Whereas human beings require 14, 15 years of nurturing. It's impossible for the child to mature unless there is 14, 15 years of tender care. Therefore, the family, therefore, organization became very critical. The second unique feature of human beings is we alone have the gift of language, the ability to communicate complex ideas to other people. Animals do communicate, but they don't communicate complex ideas. Once you have the ability to communicate, you can cooperate. You can work together. That's why a very tiny human being could control a mammoth, could conquer an elephant, or any other species on earth. Physically, we are nothing compared to many of them. But we became superior. The animal that killed the most number of people is bison, the wild buffalo. Buffaloes, they attack unprovoked. But human beings knew how to conquer them too, because we learned to cooperate. The cooperation became very easy, effective, because we are able to communicate in language. Once cooperation on a large scale is possible, a society is formed. Animals also sometimes have a society, a pride of lions, or a pack of wolves, but only for limited purposes, hunting and occasionally procreation. Whereas we could build large groups. Once you build large groups, normal instinct is not enough. We still have instinct. Your hunger, your survival instinct, reproductive instinct. Why do your parents sacrifice so much for you? Reproductive instinct. They want to make sure that the genes are passed on. They're not enough to conduct ourselves. Because now you're dealing with individual goals and society. Some reconciliation is required between individual and society. And therefore, government arose. A need to regulate human behavior beyond instinct because of the unique features of human society. So now you have this in your mind. Tell me, what should the government be doing? What is the first role of the government? It does nothing else but what should it do? Anybody?
Sir, providing unity among human beings.
That's I don't understand what it means.
Making unity, sir.
What does it mean?
One government unites one society, one kind of society.
Again, I didn't understand. What is the specific task that you have to perform? What is one thing that the government must do? If it's not done, then there is no government. Anybody? What is the one thing that is required in society? The first and most important thing. Maintaining order. If there is no order, everything is finished. A government that cannot maintain order is no government at all. Order. In the modern context, you have to expand the idea. In the earlier context, an emperor, a tyrant, a dictator would maintain order by simply crushing you, killing you, beating you up. That's not good. Now, expand the idea of order as justice and rule of law also. Justice being equitable in the modern context, and there must be rule of law so that everybody is bound by the same law. Nobody is higher than you. So the broad rubric of order. You all agree that that's the first task of a government, because we're all sitting here chatting, discussing, debating. Supposing some 20, 30 thugs come and beat us up and then do all kinds of things. What life are you talking about? You cannot do anything if there's no order. You have no liberty. You have no life. You cannot cooperate. You cannot work together. You cannot organize if there's no order. So you all agree that first is order? All right, let's assume that we have order. We do have, in some measure, we are actually pretty good. But we don't have rule of law. We don't want to go into those details now. Later we'll see if the time permits. After that, what is required? Let's assume that the government is able to establish order. Pretty good at it. Then what do you expect the government to do? What do we need from the government? Think. You're all working to be in government. Understand why the hell the government is there. Pardon?
To fulfill the needs of the people.
What needs?
Basic needs.
What does it mean?
Education.
Be a little clearer in your thinking. There are needs and there are needs. You have to eat your food, you have to clothe yourself, you have to build a shelter for yourself, you have to do something else. Is that the government's job? Does the government provide you all this? Animals do not have government. But animals do eat food, animals do take shelter. So that's not the job of the government. Don't be confused. There are some unique needs of human beings that the government must meet. What are those unique needs? Once large societies are formed, once large number of people come together, live together, work together, then there are collective needs. In life, we have individual needs, we have collective needs. Individual needs is your business. Your family decides 80 to 90% of things that matter to you. Where will we live, what work we do, what education our child will pursue, what examination she will take, what kind of dress she wears, what kind of profession she practices, what kind of job she takes up, what kind of business you do, what do you purchase, how do you save money. All these are your decisions. Others have no role. Others don't have to think about that. It's your decision. But there are some things which you need, but you cannot on your own do it. A road. Can any family build a road for yourself? Water supply. However wealthy or competent you are, can you organize water supply for yourself? Stormwater drainage. Can you do it on your own? Sewerage system. In the modern context, electricity. Even if you pay for it, you pay for it. But you can't have electricity. Each person can't have your own electricity generator, distributor, and transmitter. Right? There has to be a collective effort. What we call broadly infrastructure and basic amenities. Many of them you pay. Some directly, some indirectly. All of them you pay by taxes anyway. But many of them you directly pay. You pay tolls, you pay electricity tariff, you pay water tariff, unless the government is stupid and says the electricity tariff is waived and no, something else is waived and water is waived. I don't know why I get free water. I'm ashamed. The government should be ashamed. Disgusting. That's not their job. Their job is to ensure water is available, not to give free water to me. So basic infrastructure and amenities, which collectively only can be fulfilled. For instance, last 2-3 months I'm suffering, my wife is suffering from chikungunya. Why? How do you get chikungunya? How do you get chikungunya? Mosquito bite. Which mosquito is that? Anopheles? Anopheles gives you what? Anopheles bite gives you what disease? Malaria. All right. Another mosquito that you know of? Culex. What does that give you? In India, it used to give a parasitic disease called elephantiasis. Okay? Filariasis. But now that is largely down. But there are other diseases, other serious viral diseases like encephalitis, etc. You'll excuse you. But this disease, chikungunya and dengue fever, etc., they are given by another mosquito. What is that? Aedes aegypti. 50 years ago, when we were medical students, Aedes aegypti was not known in India. We never had a single mosquito in this country, therefore never a single case of chikungunya or dengue fever. Now, India has the largest number of chikungunya and dengue fever cases. And there is no treatment. Because these are viral diseases for which there is no specific treatment. And you can give supportive therapy and so on and so forth. But basically, you must prevent the mosquito bite. Can you prevent mosquito bite yourself, individually? You will take care at home. You have only in India, you have all out and what are those things? All those stuff. Only India has these unique industries. Nowhere in the world do we have all this. Because mosquito control cannot be at the household level alone. We must do what we can, but it has to be community. So you don't have to go far to understand why the government or where the government is failing. Mosquitoes are rampant in this country. You have plenty of mosquitoes here? Some. In some pockets, the other day I went to High-Tech's, that very fashionable building. My God, there were thousands of mosquitoes. And particularly because I am affected by chikungunya, I was very worried. I don't want to get a dengue fever or something else. So mosquito control. These are all the common amenities. Individually, you can only do this much. Ultimately, it is the collective returns. Remember, collective services. Collective services, which you cannot on your own handle and without which your life is miserable. All the things I mentioned, from road to electricity to water supply to sewerage system to stormwater drainage to mosquito control to all these things, they are collective needs. After order is assured, the next task is these basics. Let's assume that this is also taken care of. They're not taken care of well in our country. Some things are improving, some still stagnating. What next? After these two basic functions of government, what next needs to be done? Think. Imagine that a government is able to give order on justice and rule of law. A government is able to provide basic amenities, infrastructure, they've done very well. What more does the government have to do? Nothing else? All that's taken care of in order. So what more does the government need to do? What do you expect from the government? What do we need from the government? Punishment, that's all in order. Order means if somebody committed a crime, you punish. All that comes in order. You don't have to go into macro details. What is the next important thing for the government? Pardon? What does it mean, providing opportunities? How do you get opportunities?
By providing good education.
Education. Whatever I'm mentioning to you is sequential and hierarchical. Understand this. Even 2,500 years ago, 10,000 years ago, order was the most important. They didn't bother about anything else. But sometime around 2,500 years ago, Roman Empire, our own Ashoka is called Ashoka the Great. Why? One of the first emperors in the world who worried about the common amenities. అశోకుని గురించి మీ స్కూల్లో పాఠాలు ఏం చెప్తారు? చెట్లు నాటించను, బాటలు వేయించను, సత్రములు కట్టించను, అవునా, బావులు తవ్వించను. What is so unique about it? He was one of the first emperors who went beyond order, beyond expansion of the kingdom. He understood that the collective needs to be met by a good government. That's why he was Ashoka the Great. Roman Empire did a similar thing. Education came much later. When did education come as part of the government's functioning? Ashoka's time, all those people, the king's sons got education. Rich people's sons got their education, not even daughters. So when did education become a part of the government's responsibilities? When? Make a guess. Pardon? నాకేం తెలియట్లా ఏమ్మా? No, don't talk of India or something. Across the world, humanity now, enlarge your vision. Education as state function is a new thing, 19th century. What was the big thing that happened in 19th century to make education necessary? Industrial revolution. Until that time, human beings depend on either muscle power or the animal draft power. Whereas in industrial revolution, you depend on machines. You could do so much more than your own machine, your own muscle power. You use the principle of leverage. And therefore, you require to understand how to use it, how to design it, how to build it, how to use it. Therefore, education became an integral part of government functioning, starting with 19th century. And then, almost a century later, healthcare became integral to government function. Healthcare came later. So now, go back. Order, including justice and rule of law, basic infrastructure, amenities, common amenities, quality education, particularly school level, quality healthcare. These are the essential core functions of government. And in that order. It's not even as you please, because if you don't give order, everything else is nonsense. Now to go back to your thing. If all these are performed very well, if you took care of these needs very well, if you have more resources than people want it, by all means go for welfare. But not at the cost of these. No government has a right to ignore its basic functions, because that's the reason why the government exists. That's the reason of government. That's the reason why we pay taxes. You cannot ignore these functions, and our governments are they fulfilling these functions very well? They're doing terribly, disgracefully. And no government has a right to fail there and then say, I bribe you as a voter. I give you all kinds of free things. Nothing wrong in giving all kinds of free things. After all, it's our money. It's not somebody's grandfather's money. But our money is meant for collective needs, for the things without which we cannot survive as a rational society, as a civilized society, as a prosperous society. That is your main task. After that is done, if we still want more, after all, it's our money, we give you a mandate to do something else also. And we pay the money. You can do that. But what's happening now is the governments are not fulfilling the basic functions. But the governments want the vote. After democracy means people's consent. People consent means vote. In a poor country, poor delivery of services, we kept them in ignorance. Therefore, I say I'll give you free this thing, as if your grandfather is giving free. It's not anybody's private property, it's our money, public money. And naturally, people accept it. Now, you said people are like that only. They're bad. You said it, right? She said it, Sanya. People are not bad. People are desperate. People have lost faith that the government will deliver these things. That's why they send the poorest parents and their children to private schools. Even their education is bad. And if you have any sickness, you spend lots of money in private clinics, hospitals, etc., out of desperation. So people have no faith. Therefore, something tangible. నెలకు 2,000 రూపాయలు మా మహిళలకు మేము ఇస్తున్నాం. మహిళల అభివృద్ధి కోసం 2,500 ఇస్తున్నారు అప్పుడు తెలంగాణ, ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్, వాట్ ఎవర్ ఇస్ ద మనీ. సంథింగ్ టాంజిబుల్, కాంక్రీట్ నా బ్యాంకులో పడతాం. తెలుగులో ఇంకొక సామెత ఉన్నది, చచ్చినోడి పెళ్లికి వచ్చిందే కట్నం అని చెప్పాను. ఎలాగో చచ్చిపోయాడు, వాడికి ఏదో శవానికి పెళ్లి చేస్తున్నాం, వచ్చి ఎంత వస్తే కట్నం తాగట్టుకుందాం. So governments anyway are dead. They're not doing anything for us. I don't have any faith. Let them give me something tangible, verifiable, quantifiable. I know for sure. That is what is happening. So the answer is not blaming the people. People are the victims here, remember. The ordinary people, they are the ones who are suffering. Poverty, deprivation, lack of opportunity. So blaming them, saying that you voted badly because you took money, and blaming people does not solve the problem. That may absorb you and me, or at least we think it absorbs you. No, it's a very silly response. How do you Again, incentives, remember I used the word incentives. How do you create different kind of incentives to political parties, to candidates, and to the voters? How do you make them behave differently? That's the way our mind should work, not blaming somebody. Blaming somebody is the easiest and the cheapest thing, without a solution. But how has this situation come about? How do I restructure it in a manner that people think better and they work for their own collective self-interest? I'll give one example. There are many things. I live in an apartment. We pay monthly maintenance fee. Apartments pay cheyali kada? Overall maintain cheyali kada mari? Then we elected a group of people whom we trust. మీరు చూసుకోండి కామన్ అమ్యూనిటీస్ అని చెప్పాను. ఏం కామన్ అమ్యూనిటీస్ కావాలి అపార్ట్మెంట్లో? నాకు లిఫ్ట్ పని చేయాలా, ముసలోడు అయిపోయాం కదా, మీలాగా చక్కగా ఎక్కాలని మనసు ఉన్నా కూడా డాక్టర్లు వద్దని చెప్తున్నారు, కోళ్ళ నొప్పులు వస్తాయండి, నడవండి ఎంతైనా పర్లేదని చెప్పి నేను బాగా 8th floor కూడా పైకి మెట్లు ఎక్కేసేవాడిని. ఇప్పుడు మానేశాను, నడుస్తాను. దిస్ మార్నింగ్ ఆల్సో ఐ వెంట్ ఫర్ ఎ వాక్. ఐ వాక్ 6-7 kilometers. I walk today reasonably fast. I'm one of the fastest walkers in the KBR park. నాకంటే కొద్దిగా ఫాస్ట్కి వెళ్ళేవాడు ఉన్నారు కానీ, బట్ climbing up I don't do. లిఫ్ట్ లేదనుకోండి, I have an aged mother living with me. She can't go without a lift. వాటర్ సప్లై రావట్లేదు అనుకోండి నా ఫ్లాట్కి, బతుకు నరకం అయిపోతుంది. కింద పార్కింగ్ సరిగ్గా లేదనుకోండి, హెల్త్ ఎస్కార్ట్ అవుతుంది. సెక్యూరిటీ లేదని ఎవరు పడితే వచ్చి తలుపు పెట్టేసి లోటుకు వచ్చేస్తున్నాడు అనుకోండి, సెక్యూరిటీ లేదు. ఐ ఎక్స్పెక్ట్ దీస్, అందుకోసం మెయింటెనెన్స్ ఫీ కడుతున్నాను. లిఫ్ట్ పని చెప్పగా ఏం చేస్తాను, మోహిత్ భాయ్ క్యా హో రహా హై, వై ఇస్ లిఫ్ట్ నాట్ వర్కింగ్? So I know exactly why I am paying the money. I know exactly why I elected Mohit Bhai. Now if Mohit Bhai says, JP Saab, I will give you 100 rupees a month, will you take it? I will simply go and slap him. My money, I am giving you the money. I put you in this position to take care of my needs. You want to give me money? What rubbish are you talking? Because I understand exactly why I am voting. In our democracy, what we did is we didn't allow our people to understand why they are voting. పొలవమంటూ ఓటు ఇచ్చేసాం. ఓటు ఇచ్చిన తర్వాత బయటకు వచ్చి మురదాబాద్ అరుపులు నిరసనలు ప్రదర్శనలు అలవాటు చేసాం. ఈ రెండు పర్ఫెక్ట్. ఇండియా ఇస్ అబ్సల్యూట్లీ ది బెస్ట్ ఇన్ బోత్ దిస్. నో అదర్ కంట్రీ హ్యాస్ సచ్ ఎ సెలబ్రేటెడ్ అట్మాస్ఫియర్ ఇన్ ఎలక్షన్స్. నో అదర్ కంట్రీ. ఇంత లౌడ్ నాయిస్, ఇంత గందరగోళం, ఇంత హడావిడి ఎక్కడా ఉండదు, ఇంత కాంపిటీషన్. నో అదర్ కంట్రీ ప్రొటెస్ట్ సో విగరస్లీ, సో కన్సిస్టెంట్లీ. నిన్న మన పేపర్ ఏ రోజు పేపర్ వచ్చిన ప్రొటెస్టే కదా. So vote and shout democracy, we are perfect. Rest of it, we have no clue. Why people are voting? What should they expect? Who will deliver? They have no clue. Because we centralized power too much. ఎప్పుడైతే నా అపార్ట్మెంట్లోనే పని జరుగుతుందో ఎవరి బాధ్యతలో నాకు తెలుస్తుంది కాబట్టి ఐఎమ్ ఏబుల్ టు హోల్డ్ దెమ్ టు అకౌంట్. ఇఫ్ పవర్ ఈస్ సెంట్రలైజ్డ్, ఇఫ్ ఐ డోంట్ నో హూ ఈస్ డూయింగ్ వాట్ అండ్ వై, దెన్ ఐ కెనాట్ హోల్డ్ ఎనీబడీ టు అకౌంట్. So the challenge is not to blame people. How do you make them think better for themselves? How do you make them vote better for themselves, for their collective? Because remember, who are the people who are losing when the government is bad? Rich people or poor people? Rich people also lose, but rich people can manage. They have gated communities. They send their children to expensive schools or colleges. They are educated. They will also take care of their children. If healthcare is not good, they will have high premium insurance, or they will get all the savings and they spend money and get the best healthcare possible. It's the poor who cannot afford. So blaming the poor does not help. How do you make them realize their own self-interest? How do you build a link between the vote that they give and the consequences that follow that affect their lives? Between the taxes they pay and the services they are expected to receive, we have failed to establish those links. That's what political reform, much of my life's work is that. How do you redesign the government, change the nature of politics, and make the governments accountable and efficient in delivery? It's a very complex challenge. మనం డిస్కస్ చేసిన సింపుల్గా అనిపిస్తుంది. I can guarantee you, most prime ministers and chief ministers and MPs and MLAs don't understand this. ఏదో ప్రవాహం వెళ్ళిపోతున్నారు. ఎలక్షన్లు ఎలా గెలవాలి, ఎలాంటి వాళ్ళు పెడితే మనం గెలుస్తాము, 30 కోట్లు ఖర్చు పెట్టి వాడిని ఎలా తీసుకురావాలి, ఈ కులాన్ని ఎలా పట్టుకోవాలా, స్లోగన్స్ ఎట్లా ఇవ్వాలి, ఇవన్నీ బాగా నేర్చుకున్నారు. ఎలక్ట్ అయిన తర్వాత ఎక్కడ లంచాలు తీసుకోవాలి, ఎక్కడ పైరువేలకు పాల్పడాలి, ఎవరికి ఏ రకంగా కులాలను ఉపయోగించాలి, ఇవన్నీ బాగా నేర్చుకున్నారు. బట్ దే నెవర్ రియల్లీ థాట్ బియాండ్ ద పాయింట్. A few people might have to some extent. So what I'm trying to give you is a sense of what it is about to run a democracy, a complex system. And what is your role as citizens? Forget as public servants. As citizens also, unless you know how to think, how to find answers, and be a part of the solution, you become a part of the problem. Don't be alarmed. If you start thinking, and based on first principles, what is the government about? That's why I placed before you an idea, which would have been the first thing that is taught here. What is government about? Not what Hobbes said or Locke said or somebody said. Just start thinking and then build on that. You'll get a lot of answers. There's nothing rocket science I'm mentioning to you. It's a common sense, right? So start thinking. The hardest thing is to think. Think honestly. Think rationally. You get answers. So freebies are a challenge. For instance, last 1-2 years, I'm continuing to spend a lot of time. Mine is one of the lone voices in the country, probably the only voice seriously, fighting for this. How do you bring a balance between investment for the future and short-term consumption, expenditure, and welfare? You like it or not, we come to a stage where neno mero velli, nenu prajalu mi andariki nyayam chestanu, free bill ivanante downloading chestanu. Why India? Even France, even Germany, even Japan, even America. That's the problem. In a democracy, there's always a clash between the short-term political gain versus the sacrifice you have to make to build the long-term public good. There's always a clash. It's a very difficult challenge. Only great leaders know how to handle that. So you do require some freebies, but at least can we make sure that the freebies don't destroy economic growth prospects and investment? Can we at least have a simple rule? You cannot use borrowed money for current expenditure. A simple rule. Your tax money, whatever is the money realized by the government by way of revenue, you spend on salaries and pensions, on interest payments and on welfare. You decide. But you cannot borrow and spend for current expenditure because no family does it. None of your families do it. If they start borrowing for current expenditure, appu chesi pappu kuda cheste మీ అందరికి ఆస్తులు ఇచ్చేప్పుడు అప్పులు పెట్టుకుని మిగులుతున్నారు. You will hate them. No family behaves like that. Our government has no right to behave like that. If you borrow, you must show an asset, a future potential income, a better opportunity for our children. It's a very commonsensical rule, right? So how do we institutionalize that? A lot of my time is going into that right now, at this moment of time. Last 1 year, I fought on the pension system. Government employees get a very generous pension system, unfunded, burdening the rest of the society. Then it changes at 2004. But employees, కొంచెం నంబర్లు 20 years తర్వాత మళ్ళీ పాతదానికి వెళ్ళిపోండి అన్ఫండెడ్ దానికి గొడవ వేస్తున్నారు. Again, mine was the lone voice in the country to fight that. I regard as the number one enemy of the employees of government in India. I'm not their enemy, but I'm genuinely looking out for the country's interests, for the bulk of humanity, for the people of this country. And happily, because this voice still counts, because if you're rational, if you're thoughtful, if you're truthful, your voice cannot be silenced forever. So now I'm succeeding. Right now in the country, what appeared 1 year ago as a disaster, looming disaster, now there's a realistic chance that India is coming out of that, state after state. So you must be very thoughtful. You must really understand the slogans, patrikal you see, the politician speech you see, the bureaucrat speech you see. No, think, understand, learn, be humble, find solutions. That's the job of a civil servant. A job, unfortunately, many people are not taking seriously. They're all very happy. A 3 అక్షరాలు ఉంటాయి అక్కడ దిక్కుమాలిన అక్షరాలు. And they all revel in that. That's not what it is about. Okay? Question చాలా సింపుల్గా అనిపించింది. ఇప్పుడు లోతు అర్థమవుతుంది కొంతన్నా? There's so much more to it. So don't be facile. Think and understand first principles. Challenge, question basic assumptions. ఈ మాత్రం థింకింగ్ ఈ దేశంలో లేకపోతే దేశం అధ్వానంగా ఉంది. We have to know first, if you want to be agents of change, a part of the solution as citizens, as public servants, then first you must reform your own thinking, your minds. This is where everything begins. Okay? Right. Anything else? I'm sorry, it's very heavy, but think about it. Discuss, learn more and more and more. Yes, who is? Yes, young lady.
Good morning.
Go on.
Can you? Good morning, sir. This is Jahnavi. Sir, you are a reformist, former IAS officer and political leader. So, what were the major loopholes in the governance system you have seen and how did you assess them, sir? Especially like corruption.
అమ్మ ఇప్పటిదాకా నేను చెప్తున్నంతా ఆ గొడవే. How to think and how to reform. I only give you some glimpses because you can't absorb a vast complexity of governance. You mentioned corruption. Please be seated. Corruption is not the real problem. It's the symptom of a disease. లోపల జబ్బు ఉంటే పై నొప్పి తెలుస్తుంది, లేదా జ్వరం వస్తుంది. జ్వరం జబ్బు కాదు, నొప్పి జబ్బు కాదు. దే ఆర్ సింప్టమ్స్. కరప్షన్ అట్లాంటిది. కరప్షన్ ఇట్ సెల్ఫ్ ఈజ్ నాట్ ద ప్రాబ్లం. దేర్ ఆర్ సర్టన్ కాజెస్ దట్ లీడ్ టు కరప్షన్. అండర్స్టాండింగ్ దట్ అండ్ అడ్రస్సింగ్ దట్ విల్ ఎండ్ కరప్షన్, బట్ మోర్ ఇంపార్టెంట్ విల్ ఎన్హాన్స్ ఎఫిషియన్సీ. మన దేశంలో కరప్షన్ జబ్బులాగా ఎవరు ఏదైనా ఇన్సిడెంట్ రాగానే పెద్ద హడావుడిగా ఆర్భాటం చేస్తాం. ప్రతి వాడు రొమ్ములు దలుచుకుంటాడు. రేపు పొద్దున అందరం మర్చిపోతాం. మళ్ళీ 3 నెలల తర్వాత ఇంకోటి వస్తుంది, మళ్ళీ గొడవ పెట్టి మొదలెడతాం. రెండు వచ్చి మొదలాడంటారే. దట్స్ నాట్ ద వే. Corruption is like cancer. Cancer is one word. The underlying process appears to be the same, but each cancer is different. Breast cancer is not the same as cervical cancer, is not the same as lung cancer, is not the same as pancreatic cancer, is not the same as skin cancer. So you must understand, if you really want to address corruption, for instance, you must understand considerable depth, in considerable depth. I'll give you a few examples. I don't want to go into too many details. Each of the things we are discussing today, you can have a whole 2-year course. You can have a 500-page book. Each item we are discussing today. So let me give you some glimpses of it. There was a time when your parents, or perhaps your grandparents more than your parents probably were not alive at that time, they were still not born. Your grandparents' time, if you wanted to repair your house, you wanted 10 bags of cement, they had to stand in queue in front of my office when I was sub-collector. They had to wait patiently. One idiot has to put a chapa mark there. To get the stupid chapa mark, you have to pay a bribe, otherwise he would not do it. All to buy cement for your home at cost. You're not stealing, you're not doing anything illegal or immoral, but we created a scarcity, we created a license permit Raj, and you had to beg a government official, you made him the king, you made the citizen the beggar. Corruption became inevitable. Today, when you buy cement, to give one example, is there anybody who is worried about it? Kiro nunchovale, lancham ivale, lagde sifaris cheyinchukovale, vardu mudra enchukovale. Undavana? What happened? Have we all become moral giants? Were we all corrupt then and honest now? So what happened? What happened since then? Think. Emma? No, you're not paying a bribe for cement now or steel. It's not normalization of corruption. Corruption has gone in that. Corruption is eliminated in this area. So how did you eliminate corruption? What is the magic by which you eliminated corruption in cement or steel? To give 2 examples. Emma? So what does it mean, liberalization? You have dismantled the license permit control Raj. You have allowed people to produce and to sell without restrictions. We allowed competition among producers. You allowed choice to the consumers. Within years, zero corruption, zero scarcity. Okay? So you're not given moral lectures. You're not talked about honesty and morality. You simply change the way things are done. Corruption ended. Telephones. Ask your parents or your grandparents how tough it was to get a telephone 30, 40 years ago. Today, is there one of you who doesn't have a telephone? Unless your institute says you cannot have telephones? Alan rule ఉంది ఇక్కడ అది మినహాయిస్తే ఎవ్రీబడి హ్యాస్ టెలిఫోన్ లేకపోతే అవమానం కదా 14 గంటలకు టెలిఫోన్ లేకపోతే మీ పేరెంట్స్ చావు పెట్టేస్తారు మీరు. A billion plus people have telephones now. ఆనాడు అంత కష్టం ఎందుకుంది? దానికోసం లంచాలు ఇవ్వాలి, బోర్డు డబ్బులు పెట్టాలి, కొన్ని ఏళ్ళు వెయిట్ చేయాలి, సిఫారసు కావాలి, 10 రోజులకు ఒకసారి ఫోన్ యూస్ టు గో అవుట్ ఆఫ్ ఆర్డర్. You have to bribe a fellow to come and repair that. Today they are coming and begging you. Again, what happened? Technology, competition, choice. Railway reservations. 50 years ago, if you didn't pay a bribe there at the railway station, you would not get a berth in most cases. Even almost nobody pays. Maybe an occasion, one in 100. Why? What happened in railway reservations? To eliminate corruption? Think. Computerization. Once transparency and technology have come, once you know exactly whether it's confirmed, not confirmed, what is the wait list, there cannot be any mischief. Disappeared corruption. 2G spectrum. Have you heard of 2G spectrum? Miranta probably were not born. 2G spectrum time just born. They were toddlers. I was part of that. So about 2011, 2G spectrum, that means spectrum allocation for the mobile telephony, some rascals took a lot of money and gave as they pleased. It came out. Everybody said, put them in jail, arrest them, do that, do this. In this country, nobody is convicted of corruption, almost nobody. In 2G spectrum case also, after all that gadar, not one person was convicted. And the fellows put in jail for some time, they all came back as great heroes, got elected again. So I said, all this is okay, but I don't believe this. Let's do something to completely eliminate corruption in spectrum allocation in the future. At least one area, no more corruption. So I put together a team of people from all over the country, 14, 15 are the most eminent Indians. I headed them, and I went to Supreme Court and said, cancel these damn licenses first, 122 licenses, because they were given in a corrupt manner. Even if corruption is not proved, they were given arbitrarily without a proper system, non-transparent. And then order competitive bidding. It has to be by auction in a competitive manner, but in a transparent manner. Not only now, but in future also. The court gave that order. I can guarantee you, since then, there is zero corruption in spectrum allocation in India. Zero corruption. So there are ways of addressing it. The same thing will not apply everywhere. Sometimes you require transparency itself. I remember even before the Right to Information Act was enacted, and I was the architect along with Aruna Roy in that law, Right to Information Act. Even before that law came, in Hyderabad, in one of the municipalities surrounding Hyderabad, at that time I think Kukatpalli municipality, there were a building regulations came out until you build, some specifications are not met, minor violations. They can't demolish the buildings for everything as a minor things. It's not a very serious one. So they collect a penalty and regularize it. What they found is only those who pay a bribe, they are getting the regularization done. Others, you file an application, it's kept pending. I simply asked them, the municipality, come out with the data as to who applied when and what is the status of application now. I don't require anything else, because corruption I cannot prove. I know there is corruption, but I cannot prove. I have not physically seen it. There's no documentary evidence, but we know it's happening. So I said, who applied when? What is the status? Suppose somebody applied 4 years ago. Application is still pending. Somebody applied last week. That application is clear. So what happened between the two? We can understand. They said we will not give information. Then I went on a procession. Not the way the parties do, but very peacefully. with advance notice, with appropriate permissions. I also asked the former Chief Justice to join. He joined. He died, the Chief Justice died just recently. Last month he passed away, at the end of 90 years. Once I was myself involved, and the Chief Justice was involved, because of our credibility and stature, the municipality had to come to terms. They all said, sir, there is a technical adjustment function which we will do. Now we'll refund all the bribes collected. Probably for the first time in the history of this country, the bribes collected were refunded to the people. And then in each ward in the municipality, we will have a public hearing. We will place all the pending applications before the people. And we will clear whatever can be cleared. If something cannot be cleared according to rules, we will explain to them why it can't be cleared. It was done. So what happened? Transparency. Mere transparency. There's another mechanism, citizens' charters. A citizens' charter, I'm the architect of citizens' charters in India. The first charters came in Andhra Pradesh at that time, in municipalities. Basic services, each service, you mentioned what is the quality of service, what is the time frame, who is to deliver, and if there's a delay, every day's delay, a penalty to be paid to the applicant. That is where the twist is. So instead of you begging, they'll have to deliver or else they'll have to pay. I announced at the time, matching rewards. If you collected 100 rupee penalty, I will give you another 100 rupee as a reward, just to make it popular so that people can participate. In many places, people in large numbers collected the penalties. Later on, the government disbanded that because it was only disbanded by executive order, not by a law. But citizens' charter is a concept promoted by John Major as Prime Minister of Britain. So there are ways of doing it. There are ways of addressing corruption. After all this is done, there will be some areas where you cannot take out the government from. So you have to have system of accountability, police, judiciary, other things. I can go into great detail, but there's no time. In fact, the Second Administrative Reform Commission, the report on judicial reform and police reform, I myself conceived everything. It's a big, bulky volume. There, I gave the structure, how to do it, how to sequence it, and so on and so forth. It's not done yet, unfortunately, in the country. And even after all that is over, elections. As long as the demand for corruption continues because of the vast, illegitimate expenditure in elections, vast, illegitimate, unaccounted. So once I spend 30, 40, 50, 100 crores to get elected, why will there not be corruption? Whatever we do, if this door is closed, some other door is opened. So finally, how do we address the electoral system? How do we eliminate the need for illegitimate money like this? In the last 30 years, in Andhra Pradesh, and probably in Telangana, in AP Telangana, when I say AP, I mean AP Telangana at the time, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, there was nobody else who spent as little as I did and got elected. I spent just 4 lakh rupees and got elected. And it was a shock to everybody that it is possible. But increasingly it's difficult. Even that is not possible. Once in a while, maybe somebody, because of the heroic image, may be elected. But unless you spend 20, 30 crores, you can't get elected. Yesterday, a major, very influential figure from a neighboring state, a potential chief minister, he was telling me, sir, manna, by-election lani 100 కోట్లు ఖర్చు పెట్టాం ఒక్కొక్క సీట్కి 100 crores for each seat, assembly seats. So that must be addressed. So corruption can be brought down. Actually, it's brought down in many areas. It's still continuing in many other areas because the bigger picture we have not addressed. So don't moralize. Don't say Indians are corrupt only. Nonsense. We are no more corrupt or no less corrupt than anybody else. Actually, Indians are better than most people. The problem is not with us as human beings. The problem is with the kind of systems we designed, the incentives we created, and therefore the consequences that followed. That is what governance is about. That's what policy is about. That's what administration is about. When some officials are there, there is very little corruption. Have you realized? There's very high level of competence in delivery. Outcome is much greater. What happened there? Have they created a miracle? In some agencies, there's very little corruption and very high level of delivery. Take ISRO. In some functions, even a corrupt machinery delivers much better. Take elections, conduct of elections. Because the same corrupt system, incompetent system does very well. Why? In that particular context, we did a few things right. We fused authority with accountability. When both are completely fused, then to that extent, corruption comes down dramatically. So corruption is not a moral issue. We are not a corrupt society. We are not bad human beings. Corruption is a practical issue. There are reasons why there is corruption. And there are ways of addressing that systematically. Whereas we do chest thumping, shouting from rooftops, and indulging in corruption every day. 58% of Indian households, 58% of the families in India, they are forced to pay a bribe in a given year for something or other, somewhere or other. Ask your parents. Not because they're all bad people, because they have no choice. So how do you change that? That is the way of addressing rather than shor machana, drama baji karna. That's what we are good at as a country. Okay? So again, you asked for a simple question. Corruption itself, we can have a whole course. You can design a whole course, a 2-year course on corruption in India. But the basic principles, some of them I'm trying to give you a glimpse of them, how to look at it. Okay? Right.
Sir, as there are many political parties in Indian politics, so they're using the votes of women and to capture the vote. But only few political parties truly addresses the concerns of those sections. So, sir, what are the steps to be taken for the active participation of youth in Indian politics?
Youth in Indian politics. Now, I am the first one in India after independence to encourage youth to be politically engaged and the middle classes to be politically engaged. I said, look, you can't ignore politics. The punishment you get for ignoring politics is to suffer bad governance. I even founded a political party. I ran it the way exactly how it should be run in an ideal society. Now, when people want to come and say, sir, I want to contest, I tell you, don't be stupid. Don't be silly. There's no space. If you have to spend 25, 30 crores to be competitive in an assembly election, you have to spend 2 or 3 crores and up to 5 crores to be competitive in a municipal corporation of Hyderabad to be a corporator. What kind of election? So don't do that. Redefine politics. Politics is not about getting elected alone. We'll come to that later. It's about making an impact on public life. Can we make the governance system deliver for us with the money that we have given in the form of taxes, and with the authority we transfer to them in the form of the vote? And you localize and be a part of the solution by building citizens groups, by collective informed assertion, by better citizenship, and by innovation. Now, what do we do about electoral politics? Shall we leave it to all the dregs of humanity? Shall vote buying continue forever? Not at all. Focus on 3 things. The first is, supposing the parties have internal democracy. Supposing the candidate is not chosen by a party boss and is whim. And basically, the first question they ask, you ask anybody, I'm sure some of your families have politicians known to you, relations and others. You ask them, the first question they ask, నాకు సీట్ కావాలి సార్ కంటెస్ట్ చేస్తానంటే ఫస్ట్ క్వశ్చన్ ఎవరు అడుగుతారు? ఏమ్మా, ఎంత ఖర్చు పెడతాం? అవునా? సపోజింగ్ ఎమ్మెల్యే పదవికి వెళ్ళి నేను ఖర్చు పెట్టలేను సార్, చాలా నిజాయితీ పరుడిని, కష్టపడతాను సార్ ప్రజల కోసం అనుకోండి, ఏం చెప్తారు? థ్యాంక్ యూ. Supposing the members of the party choose the candidate. అరే ఈ అమ్మాయి చాలా బాగుంది, ప్యాషన్ ఉంది, తెలివితేటలు ఉన్నాయి, ఒక్కరోజు మీరంతా ఎమ్మెల్యేలు ఎంపీలు అవుతారని అట్లా కనీసం లోకల్ లెవెల్ ఎక్కడైనా సరే, సపోజింగ్ ద మెంబర్స్ చూస్, ఇంటర్నల్ డెమోక్రసీ ఉందనుకోండి, స్లోగా ద యంగ్ పీపుల్, ఇఫ్ దేర్ ఎనఫ్ వాయిసెస్ దేర్, ఇఫ్ యూ విల్లింగ్ టు సపోర్ట్ యువర్ ఓన్, then they can have a chance. That's not enough. Second thing, supposing power is decentralized. Remember I told you about centralization of power, loss of link between vote and consequences, and how vote now became a purchasable commodity. Supposing you localize power as much as possible with accountability. అసెంబ్లీ కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ మనం గుర్తుపట్టలేకపోవచ్చు, లోక్సభలో మనం గుర్తుపట్టలేకపోవచ్చు, కానీ in a village, in a town, in a small ward or something else, you can actually make yourself known with your good work, with your ability, with your organizational capability. You can make yourself known. You can be viable as leaders. The greatest damage we have done to ourselves is by centralizing power, by weakening local governments. We have the weakest local governments in the world. Weakest. పేరుకి చాంతాడంత పొడుగున రాజ్యాంగంలో రాసుకున్నాం 73rd, 74th amendments. It's all a joke. It's longer than the American Constitution. Our 73rd, 74th amendments, longer than American Constitution. We created overstructured, underpowered, irrelevant local governments. But suppose genuine local governments are there to actually make an impact at the local level, then young people can rise, and that experience will stand them in good stead. They can rise to next higher level of offices. This is the second one. Third one is a much bigger one. How do you alter the electoral system? It will take time and effort, first understanding, so that people with competence, integrity, with commitment can get elected without having to deploy 25, 30 crores. It's a much bigger challenge. Focus on these three things. Then the right kind of politics will happen. Young people will get opportunity. Otherwise, the only young people who get opportunity are who? There are some young people who do get opportunity now. Who are those? Who? Amma? Legal or illegal, not the sons of politicians, mostly sons. Occasionally, if they have no sons, daughter may be permitted. This is the politics. That's not the kind of young politics I want. I want competent, public-spirited youngsters to have space in that. Not sons of politicians coming and claiming that they're young people. Bull. There's nothing more insulting to the country than dynastic politics, whichever be the party. Nothing more insulting to young people of this country than dynastic politics. Than foisting some fellow on us because he happens to be son of so-and-so fellow. It's the ultimate disgust in democracy. And you must be very animated by that. And you must figure out how to change it. If not in one day, over time. And if you understand the problem, if you all speak with one voice, it will change, trust me. It may take some time. Okay? All right. Yes.
Sir, myself Ayaksha, and I'm from Nalgonda district. Freedom, self-government, and empowerment of the citizen. These are the principles of democratic that Lok Sabha movement has to bring focus on reforms. Sir, what according to you still people are far from the reforms?
Perma?
Why Akshaya, sir?
Akshaya. Kuchamasha. You know, the hardest thing in society is to bring about reform. Mahatma Gandhi used to say, a reformer must have infinite patience. When I embarked on this journey of reform, I left government in 1996. Nobody pushed me out. I was not one of those frustrated, inefficient fellows. I was regarded extremely highly. Everybody says, please don't go, please stay. My chief secretary came home. Ministers came home. Opposition leaders met me. So I did not go out because of frustration or failure, because I understood the larger picture. However good you are in government, however efficient you are, however public-spirited you are, the best of us, in the best of circumstances, are able to deliver on a scale of 100, maybe about 25, 30. మిగతా గాడిదలు 5 చేస్తున్నారు. 5తో పోలిస్తే 25 ఫ్యాంటాస్టిక్గా ఉంది. తెలుగులో ఒక సామెత ఉంది, విన్నారు మీరు? చెట్లు లేని చోట ఏమిటి? చెట్లు లేని చోట ఆవుదం చెట్టే మహావృక్షం. ఆవుదం చెట్టు ఎంత ఎత్తు ఉంటుంది? క్యాస్టర్ ప్లాంట్, హౌ బిగ్ ఇస్ ఇట్? It's just a shrub. When there are no trees, that appears to be a giant, a tall tree. So this 30% wallas, all of us who delivered, who are lionized, I am regarded as one of the most effective officers in the history of independent India. By any standard, I will be in the top 3 or 4 in the country. Not because I achieved spectacular things. I achieved the 30. When others are achieving 5. I achieved the 30 consistently wherever I was. But the 70 that's not done, we're ignoring it. That is a systemic problem, not individual challenge. That's the reason why I left government. When I started this movement, my dream, and if you see the old videos and writings you must have seen, we can do it in a jiffy. In 5 years' time, because for people, particularly with science and technology background, rational approach, you want evidence, you want logic, you see best practices that are working everywhere in the country or elsewhere, you innovate to suit your requirements in the country, come up with a solution, over. Problem is solved. It's solved here. But how do you solve it there? I did not realize, it took me time and experience to learn that human society does not respond like that anywhere in the world, not only in India. If they respond with intelligence, with logic, based on evidence, there's no problem at all. But nowhere in the world did it happen like that. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes perseverance. It takes innovation. It takes a superb ability to seize a moment, seize an opportunity and use it skillfully to change the way things are done. And it takes what should happen in 5 years, it will take 50 years. So unless you mentally are prepared for that, and unless you understand what needs to be done, and unless you know how to seize the moment and get big things happen quickly. I told you about 2G spectrum. At least one area, quickly we seize the moment. I'll give you another example. There was a Tehelka scam sometime around 2003, 20 years ago, 21 years ago. You were not born, none of you were born. It was a big scam before the advent of social media, etc. Tehelka scam was the biggest thing that shook India at that time. Some of the senior political leaders were caught collecting cash from some industrialists and others. And the leaders who were caught collecting cash were not bad people, they're actually good people. So everybody in India, we all love to make noise. So everybody said, no, corruption, all that rubbish. Instead, I went to every major political leader in the country, in the ruling party and opposition, including the then Defense Minister George Fernandez, who was accused of that. I met George himself in his South Block office as Defense Minister. And I appealed to every one of them, look, I'm not going into the merits and demerits of this. Can we at least use this as an opportunity to clean up legitimate money required for legitimate politics? After all, politics costs money. You want to campaign, you want to reach out to people, you want to do research, you want to develop an agenda, you want to conduct public meetings or print literature. It costs money. You want to travel. Can we at least create a legitimate window, an honest window for legally and honestly and honorably collecting money for this purpose? It will not solve all problems. At least it will solve one problem, one important problem. George Fernandez, whom I told this, immediately came out of his seat and gave me a hug and said, Dr. Jayaprakash, this is exactly the way we should think. I persuaded everybody in the country, in the ruling combined and in the opposition. The opposition at that time, Congress, appointed a committee headed by Dr. Manmohan Singh to look at political funding. Dr. Singh gave exactly the report that I wanted. I gave him all the background thing and he was completely convinced. Therefore, the Congress party's committee said exactly whatever I proposed. Amazingly, because of our persuasion, the ruling party completely agreed with the Congress party's internal committee report. Can you imagine Congress and BJP completely agreeing with each other? Uppu nippu kada? Whereas, if you go back in history, you'll find the ruling party publicly said the internal committee of Congress party, that report we completely accepted, and the law was enacted by unanimous consent without a single dissent in Parliament. That is the 2003 law on election and other related laws amendment act. So what have I done? I always knew this needed to be done, but the context, I seized the moment, the opportunity, in a non-judgmental way, without blame throwing. I can go and blame everybody, you're all bad fellows, there's corruption, all these bhashans you can give. Or you actually understand the problem, be honest about it, instead of giving speeches and being hypocritical about it. And come up with a creative and constructive solution and build a consensus. So it can be accelerated if you have the skill and if you have the credibility. Once you have the skill, you have the credibility, and you endure, then you have access. I'm one of the few who can walk into any top leader's office, ruling party or opposition. If at least if I make a phone call or I send a letter, generally it's not ignored, it's taken seriously. That doesn't happen overnight. It happens because of decades of consistency, integrity, fairness. Don't hit below the belt. Don't use an opportunity to humiliate others. Use it to elevate the whole society and come up with a constructive and real answer. And don't give some shoddy answers. There must be depth, there must be commitment, there must be scholarship, there must be background. All that gives you credibility and access. But it's hard work, I assure you. It's incredibly hard work. But that has to be done. It's our country. How else do I build a society fit for you and your children? So a reform is a very complex thing. Nowhere in the world did it happen just like that. It doesn't happen. But it happens. Eventually it will happen. Trust me. Human society doesn't have the smartness to recognize what is good for them instantly. Only a few people understand. But over a generation, as people understand the value of it in their lives, then they buy into it. That's why there's always a gap between what a reformer wants today, what the society embraces. But eventually societies do embrace. That's why humanity always progresses. We always do better and better. I'll give you one example, one story. Have you heard of a man called Ignace Semmelweis? There was a man called Semmelweis. He was born in 1819 in Hungary. At the time, there was an empire called Austro-Hungarian Empire. Vienna was the capital. Vienna was the great. Even today, Vienna is a major European city, a center of culture, sophistication, a very remarkable city. In those days, that was the city in Europe. So he moved to Vienna. He became a doctor. He moved to Vienna to practice medicine. In those days, 25 to 30% of women, 25 to 30% of women died during or after childbirth. Imagine 1/3 of women dying because of pregnancy. Most of them after childbirth. They didn't know why. They called it puerperal fever. They had some fever. They didn't know what to do with that, and they simply died. Semmelweis was very concerned about it, scientific background. But in those days, we still didn't have enough technology. We did not know bacteria. 1840s, when he was a physician, we did not know bacteria. We had no clue. The word bacteria came later. We did not have antibiotics. That came only in the 20th century. The cause is not known. But he observed, he studied, experimented. He came to some empirical conclusion based on evidence that if the doctor attending on a mother giving birth to a baby washes his hands very carefully, what we now call sterilization, before attending on her, assisting her, and after that, before going to the next patient, he discovered that if only you did that, the 30-40% mortality came down to 2 or 3%. 90% deaths are prevented. Now remember, Semmelweis was a doctor. He tried to tell his fellow doctors, not the people. We are talking about general public, poor people, this, that. No. He was trying to tell his fellow doctors, all males at the time. He said, I don't know why, but if you wash your hands before attending on the patient, patients are living, they are surviving. We're able to stop this. Please let us do that. You know what happened? What do you think happened? Normally, what would we expect? Doctors are scientists. Their job is to save lives. Here is somebody who is saying this. What should you do ordinarily? You should try it, right? Let's try it. What's the harm? Not one fellow did that. They laughed at him. They humiliated him. They branded him insane. They put him in a mental asylum. In those days, mental asylum means torture. They used to beat him up. Until 30, 40 years ago, somebody had mental illness, used to beat them up. 200 years ago, 1830s, 1840s, 50s, remember. Ultimately, he died at the age of 47 in 1866 I think, or 48. 1865, I think, he died of the injuries. That's the price he paid merely for telling people how to save lives. That's the bad news about humanity. We don't embrace it immediately. But the good news is, within 20 years, three great scientists arose. Some of the names you may know, some you may not. One is Robert Koch. Robert Koch was a great scientist whose postulates, Koch's postulates, even today, if you say COVID is caused by so-and-so virus, it's not some statement made by somebody. There are standards. There's a proof. Those postulates, how to prove that, how to understand causality, was first given by Robert Koch. Even today, Koch's postulates, modified postulates, are the gold standard. Koch is the man who discovered tubercle bacilli, the dreaded TB. Even today, doctors refer to TB as Koch's disease. Because we don't want the patients, because there's a stigma, unfortunately. So we don't want the patients to alarm. So when they discuss among themselves, they talk about it as Koch's. The second man was Louis Pasteur. The third man you might not have heard, but very important man was Joseph Lister. Those of you who use mouthwash, you must have heard of Listerine. It came from Lister's name. These three people, they understood, they were inspired by Semmelweis's work. They were 20 years behind him. In 1880s, the world transformed. It should happen immediately. It took 20 years. So trust me, things change. But sometimes it takes time and patience. You cannot give up because we're dealing with human lives. Suppose these people said, doctors are idiots, people are idiots, no matter what I do, I will not listen, they ignore. You will now would have 30% women dying after children. Things change, but sometimes it takes time, perseverance, patience, hard work, and it's worth changing. Okay? Right. Anything else? Anybody else? Yes.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Ritika. I'm from Odisha. So, your work as an administrator as well as a people's representative. So, sir, what according to you is the best way of addressing the people's concerns? Politics or administration?
ఇందాకే చెప్పాను కదా, a plumber is more important than a collector. So there's no one important thing, there's no one unimportant thing. That these are all very silly notions. But each of us, depending on the value you bring to the table, your contribution can be the highest in a certain way. It's not that particular way is the best way. It is your unique skills and your unique attributes that make you more effective in some capacities. At a personal level, there's nothing more beautiful than being a good doctor. I saved lives. I know the high of saving a life. Actually, a person who would die, you save. In those minutes, there's nothing more beautiful than that. But there are many others who can do a better job than me or as good a job as me. It's not because I did not like medicine that I entered into government, because I was influenced by emergency and I was deeply upset about what's happening in the country and our democracy and its deficit and failings. And then I want to make a contribution. Then I learned a great deal, and people believe that I delivered a great deal, more than most people. So they put me on a pedestal. Even now, where I worked, you go there, 35, 40 years later, they speak so highly. I'm very privileged that way. But most important, I learned a great deal. So I understood what needs to be done. Today, if we're discussing this, it's a distilled wisdom of a lifetime. I'm trying to compress it and trying to give some small capsules in a way that you can easily understand. And therefore, once I realized that 70% is not done, however efficient you are, ultimately, everybody accomplishing 70, 80% is more important than a few people accomplishing 30%. I decided to leave, not because somebody threw me out, not because this is more cushy. I came out without salary, without pension, with zero. Because the country's needs are far more important than your personal concerns. And I probably am regarded as the most effective reformer in the country. But I told you now, what we've done by way of reform is still small. There's so much more to be done. But this has to be done. So it's not that something is more important, something is less important. But if you choose a particular path, do you have the skills? Have you brought the values to the table? The best value to the table? Can you get the best things done? Then you will be more and more effective in that. So don't look at it as something more important, something less important. There's nothing better than a great teacher who actually inspires people. Nothing better than a great doctor who saves lives. Nothing better than a great scientist who comes up with innovative ideas. Each is important. Therefore, there's no hierarchy there. It's a question of what is the most effective way of organizing our society. Now, if I don't serve as an administrator, there are probably 1,000 others who are more than willing. All of you want to join, right? So I'm not needed. If I don't serve as a doctor, there are hundreds of thousands who are joining. But the work I'm doing, probably there's almost none in the country. So it needs to be done. Supposing there are a few hundred people doing this work, at this age I must retire. I worked hard enough, long enough. I don't require to work 14 to 16 hours every single day, 7 days a week. I still do that. Why? Because it's necessary. The country needs it. Okay? Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
We'll make it the last 3 questions are there about? Okay? Right.
I am Padavi, sir. Sir, as you mentioned about the significance of local bodies, even though there is a constitutional status for the Panchayat Raj institutions, sir, the facing the problem of lack of funding, sir. Even though there are state finance commissions, sir, they are ignorant towards the local bodies, sir. So what steps should be taken to ensure the effective governance in local bodies?
I wish I could tell you there's an easy answer. Just to give you the big picture, we think of China as an autocratic country, dictatorship, AO, highly centralized. In China, the local government expenditure is 51% of the total government expenditure. In democratic India, the local government expenditure in total, including municipal corporations, big cities and small towns and panchayats, is 3% of the total government expenditure. Now, which country is more democratic, China or India? Let's be honest. You think it is. China is more democratic. The closer to the people things happen, the more democratic it is. I'm the only Indian who dares to say this publicly. Because we are all very fond of saying how wonderful we are. Of course, I'm very proud of very good things in this country. But we also must acknowledge our failings, honestly. Not with despair, but with confidence. A confident society acknowledges its successes and also recognizes its failures. It's not afraid to admit. It's a sign of self-confidence. Only meek fellows, they want to conceal their weaknesses. So, our federalism right from the beginning was very weak to start with. Because though we conceived a genuinely federal structure, the partition put paid to all those hopes. Because the mayhem created by partition was an extraordinary event in human history, not only in India. More than 1 million people were butchered in partition. Largest number of killings in so-called peacetime without a war. 15 million people migrated permanently. Hundreds of thousands were maimed, raped. So it was an extraordinarily cataclysmic event. Our leaders naturally worried about unity of the country and order. Therefore, they initially created a highly centralized framework. But one good thing that happened in the country is union-state relationships in the past 30 years have become remarkable. Now states are their own masters. They keep complaining, but trust me, the real power is now in states. Real politics is in states. The people vote largely on the basis of their appreciation or opposition to what the state is doing. State is the unit of politics. Money from union government, large extent is flowing to states. We keep hearing about this chief and that chief minister. These are all a tissue of lies, convenient speeches. Whichever be the party in power at the national level, you take this year, the total budget, the revenues of the government of India are about 35 lakh crores. You can just Google and check. Estimated revenues are 35 lakh crores. It may be a little more, a little less finally. Of that, you know how much the states are getting in some form or the other? 23.7 lakh crores. Out of the 35 lakh crores or so total revenues of government of India, I'm talking revenues, not borrowings. 23 lakh crore, 23.7 lakh crores in some form or other. Finance Commission devolution is one constitutional form. There are also other ways. They're giving infrastructure, soft money. Basically, they call it a loan, but it's practically a grant. Zero interest, 50 years repayment is grant. You give me 1,000 crores, I'll take it. 50 years repayment, zero interest, any amount you can take. Then centrally sponsored schemes, some other programs all put together, 23.7 lakh crores. States still are complaining. Actually, there's nothing wrong in complaining and asking for more. But what are they giving to the local governments? Nada. The same framework exists. Even the 3%, most of it is either big corporations and municipalities collecting taxes or panchayats municipalities getting directly by the Finance Commission from Government of India. States rarely give any money to local governments. So the third tier, we created overstructured, underpowered government. The constitution told you how to elect a panchayat member. Nowhere in the world does a constitution say or a federal legislation say how you elect local governments. It's a local function, it's a state level function. That we put everything very rigidly in the constitution. Hundreds of words, thousands of words. When it comes to the powers of the local governments, constitution is very nicely vacillating. He said 243G says, no, if the state legislature so decides, they may empower, blah, 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 blah. Other things are, you shall do it, you shall do this, you shall do this. So the constitution itself is a fraud, that part of the constitution. Overstructured, underpowered. There's no evil intent, but they didn't care. They just wanted to make it symbolic. Well-meaning. I'm sure Rajiv Gandhi, when he conceived it, was well-meaning. But whoever failed him, I have my own theories about who failed him. We failed spectacularly. A priceless opportunity is wasted. So, and therefore the states now, if they want to do something, they can, but they don't want to. Because by now, the MLA has become all-powerful. MLA is the king of the constituency. Without MLAs, the CM cannot survive. And the IAS officer is an equal ally of the MLA. Both of them don't want decentralization. No chief minister has the courage. Kerala is the only state where, across political spectrum, there is some consensus, and therefore there is some genuine importance. Not enough by global standards, but definitely the best in India. Now, I wish I could tell you there's a way of doing it. I've been doing it for the past 25, 26 years. There's no other issue I've given more time and more devotion and more attention than this. But I must tell you, in a broad sense, I have failed so far. There were moments when we came this close to transforming the country, but for whatever reason, it didn't happen. I don't have any expectation it will happen anytime soon because there is no constituency. For instance, what we're discussing here about local governments, have you heard anything of the kind in any debate, any political party? And any news channel, TV channel, any newspaper article, any parliamentary debate, any assembly debate? So who is caring? Middle classes don't care, media doesn't care, the legislators don't care, bureaucracy doesn't want it. It's only a few people like me whose voice is in wilderness. So there is no constituency in India for local governments. And we are equally guilty, the people, because we want centralized power. We don't want democracy. Democracy makes us all equal. We are happy to prostrate before some idiot from state capital or national capital. We don't want local fellow to have real power because then we feel, who is this fellow? So it also speaks of our democratic temperament or lack of it as a people, as middle classes. So right now, we have to do the best we can. We are trying several tactics. I'm going to make the Finance Commission chair and the commission itself sometime this month, next month probably. Already, maybe this month itself. Arvind Panagarya is a good friend. He told me, you must come and discuss with us. We are desperately looking for that. We will find some ways. We'll see if those things work. Keep at it. One day, until the people of India realize that real governance, real democracy is here, not there. It will take time. It's hard work. We should have designed it better. We messed up as a country. But states are now all powerful. Don't trust any leader who says power is centralized. It's a lie. States now have all power, as opposed to 30 years ago, because liberalization meant the states are in charge of their destiny. They can make economic decisions from ports to infrastructure to anything else. Because public sector's importance coming down means Government of India cannot then show patronage. I will establish the unit here is automatically a great thing for the state. Now who is bothered with Government of India's investments? Because Article 356 became a dead letter in the Bombay case judgment. You cannot dismiss a government in the state at will. That was the weapon used all the time to control the states earlier. Because coalition governments became the norm increasingly, regional parties became important. You cannot now write roughshod over the states. So a series of political and economic and legal developments have made our federalism very, very strong insofar as union states are concerned. This is something many people are forgetting. We always discuss the problems of 50 years ago. Like even today, some people say population is the biggest problem. They're talking rubbish. They're talking absolute rubbish. That's the problem of 50 years ago. So we are not really keeping track of what is happening in the country and addressing the challenges of today. We're trying to address the challenges of our grandfathers. Okay. Anything else?
So, myself, Anushree. I'm from Kamareddy.
Parentama?
Anushree.
Anushri. Okay.
Sir, could you share your memories and experiences of you working as Prakasham district collector? That would help us in our administration.
No, many people know about that. But basically, it's an illustration of what can happen if you actually design things better. If you empower people in a responsible way, if you build a system of accountability. So whatever we discussed today, some other things, where are you from? Kamareddy. So the reason why she talks about that district or East Godavari or Vizag is people who have seen what they believe were spectacular accomplishments. Out of the ordinary, never before done and never repeated subsequently. But there's nothing unique I have done. I have done simple things. But basically I empowered the people. Instead of one collector functioning, I made all the people partners in that and gave stakes to them. I designed it sensibly and created a framework in which delivery is possible. The rest of it, the people did it. I simply sat back and relaxed. So that's the basic principle. I'll give you an example. Now that she asked a specific question. There are umpteen number of examples you can give, but one example I'll give. When I went to the district, it was an incredibly drought-prone district. It was the poorest of the 23 districts of Andhra Pradesh. Administratively, it was the worst. There used to be a ranking of all districts. That district was ranked 20 every month. And all outcomes. That's how I joined the district. Actually, I was posted to Krishna district. I myself told the chief minister I hail from the district, therefore post me somewhere else. Then they posted me to Prakasham. I went there in the peak of summer. Now, I always believe it's not your file pushing alone that matters. That has to be done, but that's not the main work. Each district, each agency, each department that you handle has unique characteristics. You must understand what really are the strategic goals that are required in the particular context. It may not apply in another context. If I'm in Jaisalmer, it will not be the same as in Prakasham, not the same as East Godavari. You have to understand the lay of the land. You have to develop strategies for human development, for prosperity. What are the so goal setting is the most important thing. One of the goals I set for the district was, I will tap every single drop of water to provide irrigation to the fields at the lowest cost possible. And it was possible. Now I needed resources. The government of Andhra Pradesh, then N.T. Rama Rao's government, came out with a novel program for the first time in India. They said, we will not decide from state capital how money is spent. We will allocate to the districts untied funding. They called it Kranti Patham. Names are not important. But basically untied funding. The people will decide what it should be used for. But there's a caveat. You must come up with 50% of the resources. So there's immense freedom now. You can decide. Earlier, there's no freedom. All districts got that money. No district utilized it. Because they didn't know how to utilize it. The idea of 50% from the people deciding, these are all novel ideas. They didn't know what to do. Only Karimnagar utilized it, but utilized it by a chicanery, by fudge. Karimnagar got a lot of money in the royalties of your Singarani collieries. That money, they claimed is the public contribution, which is a lie. Technically, it was wrong. So they put that money to government money and build projects as normal. Roads and other things. If you give money, we know how to spend it, how to waste it, how to swallow it. But they didn't do the way it should be. Only Karimnagar, at least that much they tried. Other districts, zero expenditure. At that time, I had 5 crores. 5 crores then is equal to about 100, 150 crores now. I only had 5 crores to start with. So I designed the program well. What did I do? There were lots of drains, there were lots of minor rivers, and of course, other water sources available. The water is going simply down the drain, wasted. The fields are dry, but these channels are water. So I popularized the idea. Look, if you have land, agricultural land, if there is any water source available which is technically feasible, economically viable, because I can't give you unlimited money. So I had to put a ceiling per acre X amount is the expenditure that I allow. If you're going to come forward with bearing the 50% cost, you don't have money. I only require your will, your desire, because you have land. You came to me for irrigation because you have land. It's my duty to ensure that you get the loans. That means land documents, that means banks, coordination, a lot of work is required. That's my duty, that's my job. If I don't do it, I'm unfit. I'll take care of that, but you must be willing. And you must be willing to repay. Not collectively, but individually. Collectively is all a joke. So you must be individually liable for your field. Per acre, X amount, you'll get the loan, whatever is required to build the project. And post project construction, you must all learn to maintain yourselves. I also designed, I think at the time, 2 years of maintenance cost included in the project cost, so that in 2 years, if the farmers get the water for their fields, they understand the benefits, they enjoy the benefits. My hope is that all the caste, other things will disappear, and they will actually run it well for their own benefit. This is all I have done. And every day I used to meet about 500 to 1,000 people. My doors were always open. Whatever capacity I served, there's always a board. Visitors are welcome to see so-and-so at any time without any obstruction whatsoever. Day, night, Sunday, festival, holiday, home, bedroom, irrelevant. I was always available. Midnight, people used to knock. I remember drunkards coming and knocking the door. My staff had standing instructions. If you say Collector Saab is sleeping, you'll be sacked. No matter who comes when, I'll be available. If it's inconvenient to me, if the fellow came to me, disturb me without any good reason, I will scold him. But you will not become an obstacle. So one fellow, a drunkard, actually came. My fellow said, no, Collector Saab, at this time I will come to drunk. He said, but look at the board. So he didn't dare to not wake me up. He went with my lungi. Middle of the night, what do I do? I can't go and put on clothes, no? So the fellow came here, no, nothing really. Then I scolded him in a gentle way, Buddhandana Gadidan Japan. That's my privilege. But there should not be any obstacle. I really enforce that. Every day, roughly, there were times on a day I used to say 1,000 people. Morning, afternoon, night, anytime. But I communicated to the people. Whoever came to me, I always had 2 things. I had to listen to them, try and address their problems. I had a system to take care of that. But 2 things I always communicated. One, do you have land? Do you have irrigation? And is there some possibility of getting some irrigation from something? Then why don't you use this opportunity? Second thing, how many children do you have? If you have 2 children, have you sterilized yourself? Or you observed family planning? Because I said all government benefits will only go to people with 2 or fewer children who have sterilized themselves or who have accepted family planning. It's a draconian, probably illegal. I did it anyway. Not one person resisted. Not one person opposed. I gave them special cards. Once they have fewer than 2 or fewer. All these people with these cards, I had some money available because my district became the most successful in small savings. Therefore, I got an award money, some 10 lakhs in those days, very big money. So I drew a big lottery. I gave them, in those days, gold, 2-3 lakh rupees worth, now probably 30 lakh or 25 lakh worth gold to all the winners of the lottery. So these are the 2 things. It became a movement. We had the highest family planning implementation in the country at that time. And I got 453 lift irrigation projects. I got 70 or so what are called check dams where the level is raised. I got about 3,000 bore wells dug, all at a fraction of the cost. Just to give you an idea of how beautifully it worked. The government used to spend about 10 to 12,000 rupees per acre for irrigation from a state corporation called Irrigation Development Corporation, all spent by the government. Even after they did the work, very often they were not electrified. The work was wasted. And after, even if it's electrified, post that, every year per acre in those days, government was spending 450 rupees to maintain the irrigation systems. Now come to these projects. I spent 2,000 rupees per acre on an average. After that, only 1,000 rupees is spent by the government. 1,000 rupees is their loan. Maintenance is theirs. I didn't spend a single rupee for maintenance of the project subsequently. And if it's a bore well, all bore wells were electrified, whereas earlier the government sunk bore wells, they costed much more, but they were not electrified in some cases because the distance was too great. Electricity board could not give the electric line and so on and so forth. I actually spent a crore and a half, specially separately to help those 450, 500 bore wells. Whereas here every bore well is electrified. And all the loans that they borrowed from the banks, they were all repaid without a single defaulter, well before schedule. In fact, bankers came to me and complained to me, sir, మంచి లోన్స్ ఇవన్నీ వాళ్ళు తొందరగా ఇచ్చేస్తా ఉంటున్నారని చెప్పంటే వాళ్ళు రుణగ్రస్తులు చేయకుండా if they want to pay back money early, take back the money అని చెప్పి I pushed them. 2 lakh acres of irrigation came about. Until that time, in all the state of Andhra Pradesh, 23 districts, 22 districts outside of Hyderabad, the government corporation spending phenomenal sums could do 1,10,000 acres in 25 years. In one district, 2.5 years, 2 lakh acres. At 2,000 rupees per acre, of which government spent only 1,000 rupees. It was a phenomenon. 1 lakh families came out of poverty permanently. So it's possible. I'm not saying everything can be done everywhere in the same manner. But if you apply your mind, if you empower people, if you give the right kind of incentives, you design the system properly and deliver effectively, it becomes a movement. It becomes a revolution. If you do it in the routine way, I never even inspected a single project. I said, why should I bother? It's you. You do it on time, you benefit. You get one more crowd. You don't do it, you lose. Why do I care? If you want it, it will be done. If you don't want it, it will not be done. So sometimes, they used to, whenever they knew that I was traveling in that area, they used to stop me and then take me affectionately. Sir, you have to go to the fields, interior. No electricity, nothing. Petromax, they used to take me. If it's evening 7 o'clock already. And it's celebration for that. You can do wonders if you really care, if you design properly, if you believe in true democracy. And if democracy is not anarchy. Democracy is not freedom as license. Democracy is generating that kind of public spirit, creating the collective interest, designing it properly, and then making it happen. And now, how many years now I left that district? 37 years ago I left, 36 years ago. There is not a household in the district who doesn't think of it even now. But the broader point is not about individual heroism. It's about what can be accomplished, how little we are doing, how much we deserve. If you really think, that's what administration is about. The cavalier approach that I'm in power, I'm in privilege, I'm in position, I must be rewarded. There are plenty of rewards outside. Please seek those rewards, enjoy your life. But here is an opportunity. India needs it. Let me conclude with this. I don't know if there's a God. Long ago, I gave up on God. My policy in dealing with God is one of mutual non-interference. If God doesn't bother about me, I also don't bother about God. Everything is okay. But I do believe there is sin. There are 2 great sins. The first is unfulfilled potential. If a child is born with innate talent, and every child is born with certain innate talents, and abilities. Every child has potential. If that potential is not realized because the society has not given the tools for the child to flourish, to me that's the greatest sin. If your birth, your caste, your parentage, your access to certain things, they are denied to you, and therefore, merely because of the circumstances of birth, the accident of the womb, you are made inferior to your colleagues, your peers. That's the greatest sin. The second is avoidable suffering. Unavoidable suffering, there's nothing you can do. Old age, people die. Some incurable disease, you suffer and you die. We hope you won't get it. If you get it, there's nothing much you can do. We do the best we can. But there's a whole lot of avoidable suffering. That's the greatest sin. Public administration and governance are about the collective good and about eliminating these two sins. It's a great opportunity. You can do it in government, you can do it as citizens. There are so many citizens in this country and the rest of the world who did spectacular work to transform lives. Semmelweis was not in government. He did more good to humanity than all the public administrators put together. So don't put IAS or something else on a pedestal. Don't worship power. It's an opportunity. With public money, with the opportunity that the law and the policy gives you to make a difference to lives, it's a privilege. With all the intelligence you and I have, if you want to do the same thing in Prakasam district or East Godavari, what I have done, the irrigation and drainage system, I completely transformed it in the whole state of Andhra Pradesh, using that as a perch. I could never do it as a citizen. I can raise the voice. I can show the solutions. But only if you're in public office, if you have the right mind and the opportunity, you can make a difference. Keep that in mind. Don't put them on a pedestal. Don't think of them as something great. Don't take glamour as important. That's a terrible way of looking at it. Trust me, today I think some of you may be disappointed because I'm not putting IAS on a pedestal. I'm telling you, I'm trying to bring back to the earth. But eventually, in the years to come, you will all understand what I'm saying and why I'm saying that. We all have one lifetime. You have to combine your personal goals. Nothing wrong in wanting a good life. Nothing wrong in wanting to succeed. Nothing wrong in wanting to reach the top. Personal ambition is necessary. As long as other people are not hurt by that. As long as public purpose is served, the more ambitious you are, the more hardworking you are, the better. But there are so many ways we can make a difference. Make the most of this. Fulfill your dreams in personal life, but promote public good. As public servants, if you have the opportunity, or as human beings, as citizens, good citizens. And the art of good living is combining individual goals with public good. Because you know what, I keep telling people, no matter what you do in life, how successful you are, how wonderful your home is, you may build a mansion, you may have all the luxuries and comforts, but the mosquito that bites the neighborhood urchin will surely enter your home also. You cannot protect yourself beyond the point. It will bite you also. It will transmit the chikungunya virus as I got, or dengue virus. Because you know what? Mosquitoes are truly socialist. They don't care about your rank, your position, your wealth, your status, your power. They treat you as just another human being. They want to suck your blood for their survival. So public good is about controlling mosquitoes. It's as simple as that. Individual goals and public good cannot be separated. Only in a foolish society they are delinked. Always keep that in mind. And the work you want to do, put that in perspective. Individual goals and collective good. How do you find the harmony, the balance? Once you do that, once you start thinking intelligently, rationally, honestly, based on evidence and logic, you will be a part of the solution. You will have fulfilled lives. I wish you all the very best in your personal lives and in professional careers. Good luck.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. As we come to the conclusion of this enlightening session, it is my privilege and honor to deliver the vote of thanks. I extend our heartfelt gratitude to Sri Jayaprakash Narayan Sir for gracing this occasion and sharing his invaluable insight with us. So, your words not only deepened our understanding about administration and government, but have also ignited a sense of purpose and responsibility in all of us. Your vision and commitment to public service are truly inspiring, and we are grateful for the time and effort you dedicated to being here today. I also take the opportunity to thank our Narayana management team, sir, and principal ma'am, who made this event possible, and our distinguished audience whose enthusiasm and engagement added to this program. Let us take forward the lessons and inspiration from today's event and strive to emulate the values that Sri Jayaprakash Narayan sir embodied: integrity, service, and a relentless drive for excellence. Thank you everyone for your presence over here. Have a great day.
Thank you. Right. ఏం చేసుకుంటామో తెలియదు నాకు అమ్మ నేను వద్దు నేను షాల్స్ వేసుకో వద్దు థ్యాంక్ యూ. మీ పిల్లల్ని చెడగొట్టానా ఐఏఎస్ ఇంపార్టెంట్ కాదని చెప్పి నేను ఐ ఓన్లీ ఈట్ ఓట్ మీల్ అది
fruits and coconut water.
ఆల్ ది బెస్ట్.